Hi, everybody. Tonight's stream is not an Insomniac stream because, I don't make videos for a living. Maybe in the future that might be an option, but right now nobody's paying me to do this shit. I have a job. So, on the days that I'm off, I can stream at 5, 6 o'clock, a reasonable hour. So, um, if you've been keeping up with shit that's going on in BRG's world. I'm trying to be more organized with these things. I'm not just going to drop in and be like, hey, at 11 o'clock in the evening tonight, I'm going to be playing Rise of Nations or shit like that. So I'm professionalizing this thing, okay? Because that's what people want to see. So I made a schedule for streams that I'm going to be doing this week, and I'm going to be doing that regularly so people know what to expect. But tonight's stream is going to be about Jesse Jackson, but I figured I'd start about 20 minutes early because we just got this. The mayor of Atlanta, Andre Dickens, I'm sorry, um, put this out yesterday. Senator Raphael Warnock has shown concern about measures that Mayor Dickless has been taking to stymie the process to put a vote, a referendum, if you will, on the ballot regarding Cop City. And the mayor replied with this long ass thing. And I'm just going to be reading it. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to read it because it's pretty obvious that, okay, just like basic political instinct, if more people have signed a petition saying, like, hey, we have some qualms about this thing that you're doing, than people who actually voted in the election that made you mayor, you might want to like take a step back. Like you see Biden's on the UAW picket line today because like he's a politician who responds to pressure. Of course, if he was a good politician, he would have been out there on the first night. But I digress. He was summoned to the picket line by Sean Fain and the dope ass workers of the UAW. Andre Dickless doesn't seem to have that political consciousness. He seems to want to be a dictator who's like, you know what, I do whatever the fuck I want. So let's see what's going on with this fella. Hmm. Dear Senator Warnock, thank you for your note and for our previous conversations over the last few weeks regarding Cop City. Oh, I'm sorry, the Public Safety Training Center. I have attached to this letter direct responses to your questions written by the Office of the City Clerk. However, before we delve into the intricacies of this process, I think it's important to make some clear foundational positions, especially as it relates to the democratic process, public safety, and my vision for Atlanta. Last year, 171 people were murdered in the city of Atlanta. 83% were African American males. The violence that gripped our city for the last few years created fear and uncertainty in the hearts and minds of our neighbors. And the people asked, where is our justice? Where is our safety? So already he's like concern trolling. Like he wants Cop City. He wants Cop City, and he's going to try to get Cop City over concern, righteous concern about the fact that, hey, 83% of murder victims in Atlanta were young African American males. Okay, whoop de fucking do. But like that, that's concern trolling. You cannot just be like, hey, this horrible thing is going to is happening. So we're going to put this other horrible thing. Like, okay, how many African American males were murdered by the police in your city last year? Maybe he addresses that later on. I doubt he does. At the same time, we witnessed the murder of George Floyd and far too many others, and the country once again grappled with the harsh truth that too many people who looked like us were being killed by the people sworn to protect us. The police are not sworn to protect black people. The police are sworn to protect property. You know better, man. You have to know better. Just, okay, you don't have to have a degree in African American studies or critical race theory to realize that the police are not here to protect black people. Okay? Black people make the police make problems for black people. They do not solve any of our problems. We do not have to choose between making common sense investments in our police, fire, God, these documents are always so fucking boring. Our police, fire, and EMS workers in addressing the root causes of crime. We can and will and must do both. I'm reading a book. It's called The CIA's Organized Crime. It's taken me a while to read it. It's a very dense read because, from what I've seen of Douglas Valentine, he's a very dense author, but in a way that's good because he knows his shit. And it's not like I despise pop history. Just bullshit that people stuff between pages to make their books fly off the shelves. I hate that shit. So I'd rather a dense book than than just some bullshit that was just made to sell. A pot boiler, I think is the industry term. But like the police, the CIA, the FBI, like these people actually create crimes. Okay? Like the war on drugs, they literally entrap people into committing what are statutorily defined as crimes so that they can shunt people into prison and use them as slave labor. Anyways, I've set a goal to make Atlanta the best place in the country to raise a child. So making a facility that trains cops to better murder black children, like that's making it a safe place to raise a kid. Like this is just political doublespeak. Driven by a spike in violent crime, the last Atlanta mayoral election less than 2 years ago was dominated by public safety. Do we achieve public safety through more officers or more training or investing in addressing the root causes of crime? The answer to all of these is yes. No, the answer is by actually providing social services and social programs to help get people off the streets. The police do not help with that. The police just sit and eat up a substantial chunk of every city in this country's budget, and they don't provide anything that benefits the masses of people, the masses of working class people, unless you consider corpses, which are only good for funeral directors and cemeteries, to be uh, the creation of public goods. So, were I mayor of Atlanta, I would slash the police budget. I'd piss the fucking police union off, but fuck the police union. Police should not have unions. But I would slash the police budget and plow that money back into the communities. Rehab tumble down houses, bring back neighborhoods, open up city owned grocery stores like Brandon Johnson in Chicago is doing. Like there's a lot of shit you could be doing other than continuing to try to cram this deal down people's throats when it's obvious that the masses of people in your city do not want it. And you're talking about creating well paying, secure jobs. Do your kids feel safe at school? Are we financially secure? Like these are the things that you should be concerned about as the chief executive of a major American and a major world city. Cop City is something that you should flat out come out in opposition to it. But because you're a neo-colonial hack, you're not going to. What up, Vap Mayo? Y'all, you choose the weirdest fucking names. Ugh. Last year, the Atlanta Police Department alone responded to 748,000 calls for service from our residents, business owners, and visitors. That's nearly 750,000 reasons having well trained first responders is so important to the safety and security of all who call our city home. I'm 3 pages in and I'm already sick of this shit. Gathering signatures from 15% of registered Atlanta voters in 60 days is the mandated threshold, and if that is met, then this question should and will be put to a vote. People have spoken, but we have a duty to review these petitions and ensure that it is Atlantans who are speaking for Atlanta. Okay, like nobody is going all the way out all the way down to Savannah to get signatures. Okay, these people live in Atlanta. Why are you bullshitting? Why are you playing with people, man? I believe in this city. I believe in its people. I believe that Atlanta is and will continue to be a safe and prosperous city. The Public Safety Training Center is only one part of that effort. We cannot lose sight of the whole vision because of this debate. This is the primary issue impacting your city. This is not just a manufactured debate. People have like many interest groups of people of your constituents have hard questions about what the fuck you're doing. Like, why are you continuing to force this deal down people's throats? Like, how much have you been paid? Have you been taking bribes? Like, why are you so fucking gung ho about this, man? Oh, this is dope. Just watch the status quo live footage. A lot of workers are talking about socialism, even some vague communist sympathies. Corporate called the cops midstream. The damn scab trucks weren't getting through fast enough, I guess. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how I can get this fucking pin to work. Working on fixing up my stream. And I can highlight chats now, but let's see. How long do I want to stick? There we go. That's pretty neat. That's cool. So yeah, has Andrew Dickens lost his mind? I think he has. Let's see what else he has. More boring legalese. See, the thing with like, I love people who read these things whose job it is not to read these things. Like, people do this stuff like because it's important to actually go through this stuff so that you can point out how these politicians lie. But like, this is just the most fucking dry ass shit. I don't know if it's because I have ADHD or what, but like, yeah. Similarly, a 2023 effort using paid petition circulators, as were used in the Atlanta campaign to get a GOP candidate onto a primary ballot in Colorado, was found to involve thousands of fraudulent signatures. So this guy is basically acting like Trump now. Oh, it's voter fraud. That just shows how like the two wings of the ruling class, the neoliberal Democratic wing and the outwardly fascist Republican wing, like have the same um have the same talking points. Like, oh, if somebody's doing something that you don't like, these white anarchists from out of town are trying to come and fuck up my money. Let's just say that the votes and the petitions are just illegal. Let's just say that they're using people from all over the fucking place or they're lying about their addresses. Like, bro, it's a fucking petition. Okay? Why is the petition so successful? Because these people, these organizers, they do what organizers do. They go from door to door, talking to people, uniting people around the fact that Cop City, this deal that you're trying to shove down people's throat, is absolute fucking garbage. And you're mad at that. You're a democratically elected politician, yet you're acting like a little kid who got his toys taken away. Just stop supporting it. People will like you if you stop supporting Cop City. Hell, they might even reelect you. But the way you're going, shit like this is going to get you unelected really fast. You are going to lose your job because of fucking Cop City. But common sense is uncommon these days. Oh, this guy actually follows me on Twitter, Furky Chambers. Why would you print that out? And oh, you're trying to say that Fergie is dark money that's coming to take over the fucking city of Atlanta. Bruh, come on, just chill. Yeah, he's losing his mind and he's scared. So shout out to Marissa Pyle for that very necessary yet very dry release of that document. So run Jesse Jen, run Jesse run. Um, so Jesse Jackson, if you've grown up in the United States in the past 60 years, you know who the fuck Jesse Jackson is. He ran for president twice, once in 1984 and once in 1988. And just looking into this guy's campaign, um, he's basically what Bernie tried yet failed to be. Like Bernie Sanders, my position on him has like softened since I was like a hardcore cracker control, uh, swing set bombing Maoist. Okay, so my position has changed a lot. No, I did not actually blow up a fucking swing set. I will deny that to my grave. But that's my lure, if you will. So people think that BRG bombed his Karen neighbor's swing set with the fucking big ass fireworks. So whatever. Um, Bernie Sanders actually, I would say, did quite a bit for the socialist movement in the United States. Okay, like that's the thing with Maoists. Maoists are so fucking dogmatic, and I say this as someone who's still a Maoist. Like we're just so fucking dogmatic. Anybody that doesn't hop up on stage at the Democratic National Convention and declare protracted people's war, we consider a revisionist and a rightist and all sorts of other nasty things. But like as I get older and as I read more and as I develop more politically, I start to realize that people like Jesse and people like Bernie actually do quite a bit of good for people. And as Amiri Baraka, who we're going to meet later, said, how is one going to do a socialist revolution if they can't even elect the mayor? What he meant by that is like if you cannot actually handle the organizing intricacies of a campaign, like if you cannot actually put your agenda before the people, like do you actually think that you and like five of your buddies are going to be able to go out with guns and just seize state power? No, you're just going to get shot. Okay, like I'm going to do a handful of videos on like the guerrilla movements, the urban guerrilla movements of the mid 70s at some point in the coming months. But like that later for that shit, man. Like nobody wants to die. Like these people died horrible deaths and they were sent into exile. Are they heroes? Do I admire them greatly? Yes. But like their politics were just so fucking wacky. They had no mass support, and their analyses of the system under which we live and what's going on was just so piss poor, and that's why they ended up failing. M19, Black Liberation Army, Symbionese Liberation Army, which counts actually as a cult, Weather Underground, like all of these people, they were very heroic people. It takes a very heroic person to throw down with the most heavily armed imperialist police force in human history. But heroism does not make revolution. People make revolution. So this was in 1972 when all that urban guerrilla shit was going on. This is Jesse Jackson. This was Watts stacks. You had the Watts riots in '65. So this was 7 years after that. It was a music festival, basically like celebrating the Watts Renaissance, so to speak, and the fact that some progress supposedly had been made after the uprising, which destroyed a substantial portion of Watts. So let's see what Jesse Jackson had to say. And Jesse Jackson was already known by this time because of Operation Breadbasket um, and other grassroots programs that he'd be involved in. He cut his organizing teeth actually as an aide to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and his Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Jesse was actually present when King was assassinated in Memphis on April 4th, 1968. So, young activist. What I call him a revolutionary? Absolutely not. SCLC was pretty rightist. Now, if he was at SNCC under H. Rap Brown and Kwame Ture and all those people, yeah, he would have some revolutionary credentials. But Jesse has, he is, if I had to align him, like put him in a political box, his politics are probably democratic socialist in the black tradition. There is a difference between black democratic socialism and white democratic socialism.
It's a beautiful day. It is a new day. It is a day of black awareness. It is a day of black people taking care of black people's business. Today, we are together. We are unified and on one accord. But when we are together, we got power, and we can make decisions.
Everybody rocked the afro back then, regardless of politics. You even had fucking black Republicans rocking afros. You know, this wasn't a black is beautiful. It was definitely a politically influenced movement, but it was also a cultural movement. Like, you were uncool in the 70s, if in late 60s, if you did rock the afro. I guess in my case, I would have to rock a wig, but yeah. Yeah, I also dig his mutton chops.
Today on this program, you will hear gospel and rhythm and blues and jazz. All those are just labels. We know that music is music. All of our people got a soul. Our experience determines the texture, the taste, and the sound of our soul. We say that we may be in the slum, but the slum is not in us. We may be in prison, but the prison is not in us. In Watts, we have shifted from burn, baby, burn to learn, baby, learn. We have shifted from having a seizure about what the man got to seizing what we need. We have shifted from bed bugs and dog ticks to community control and politics. That is why we gather today to celebrate our homecoming and our own sense of somebodyness. That is why I challenge you now to stand together, raise your fists together, and engage in our national black litany. Do it with courage and determination. I am somebody. I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody. I may be on welfare, but I am somebody. I may be
Saying that you are somebody is especially important to people who have been told throughout our history, like black people have, that we are nobodies. Like, we were brought here on slave ships and we literally had our names changed. We don't know what parts of Africa we come from in many cases. And like, Afro-pessimists would say that, like, there's nothing to being black in this country. Like, black people do not exist. We are literal, like, ants to be stepped on and manipulated and used for the benefit of non-black people. Of course, I don't agree with that position, and I'm also no expert on Afro-pessimism because I find it fucking funky and weird. But, like, saying that, raising your fist and saying that you are somebody when you have been told that you are not, and note that he also has, like, he's also addressing people of different classes. Like, I may be on welfare. I may be in the slum. I may be in prison. I may be in all of these horrible places. But at the end of the day, I'm also an autonomous human being. And people in my community are also autonomous human beings. And we have innate human rights that we can only get through struggle and political action.
Skill, but I am somebody. I am black, beautiful, proud. I must be respected. must be protected. What time is it? When we stand together, what time is it? When we say no more yes to both, what time is it? What time is it? What time is it? Sister Kim Weston, the Black National Anthem.
So, yeah, that was Jesse Jackson in his prime, coming out of the struggles of the 60s and coming into his own as a political leader. Note that I said political leader, not revolutionary leader, because Jesse Jackson would probably greatly resent being lumped in with with do nothing hackneyed revolutionaries in the United States. So the Rainbow Coalition, you cannot talk about Jesse Jackson without talking about the Rainbow Coalition. So this is the second Rainbow Coalition. If you know anything about revolutionary history in the United States, you had the first Rainbow Coalition, which was established by the Chicago branch of the Black Panther Party in the late 60s. That original Rainbow Coalition it was essentially a bunch of revolutionary groups from different parts of Chicago and from different ethnic groups. So you had the Young Lords representing the Puerto Rican community. You had the Young Patriots representing the Appalachian white community in Uptown. You had the Black Panther Party, of course, and those were the big three that comprised the Rainbow Coalition. The purpose of the original Rainbow Coalition was to build a united front to fight against Pig Chicago, to fight against the police, to fight against the crooked political machine led by Mayor Daley, and basically get everybody on a united and agreed upon accord so that revolutionary change could be made. The second Rainbow Coalition was a political coalition. So Jesse Jackson explains it as forgiving each other, redeeming each other, regrouping, and moving on. Our flag is red, white, and blue, but our nation is a rainbow. Red, yellow, black, brown, and white, and we're all precious in God's sight. So a lot of pro-American rhetoric because he was running for president of the United States. Like Jesse Jackson was not going to jump up on stage at the DNC and chant out death to America because like that's just fucking silly. You know what I mean? Like I would have done that shit when I was like 21, 22, but like how the fuck are you going to organize Americans or organize for revolutionary change in the United States when you are telling people who by all polling data are pretty happy to live here that their country should be destroyed. So, like, edgy shit, as you develop and as you grow politically, you start to realize that that's not where it's at. And you have to actually be a political actor. You have to actually do politics. And shouting death to America and burning the American flag, yeah, that's fun shit to do when you're like 19, 20, 21 years old. I did it myself. But as you rapidly approach 30 years old, as I am, you start to realize that doing stuff like that as a grown-ass man, it limits you to the political margins and people don't take the things that you're saying seriously. I understand some people may call me a social democrat for saying this. I don't fucking care. From Fannie Lou Hamer, to in Atlantic City in 1964, to the Rainbow Coalition in San Francisco today. From the Atlantic to the Pacific, we have experienced pain but progress as we ended American apartheid laws. We got public accommodations. We secured voting rights. We obtained open housing as young people got the right to vote. We lost Malcolm, Martin, Medgar, Bobby Kennedy, John, and Viola Luiso. Viola Luiso was an Italian American housewife from Detroit, if I recall correctly, who was murdered because she was driving civil rights activists around in Selma, Alabama. The team that got us here must be expanded, not abandoned. Old wineskins must make room for new wine. We must heal and expand. The Rainbow Coalition is making room for Arab Americans. They too know the pain and hurt of racial and religious rejection. They must not continue to be made pariahs. The Rainbow Coalition is making room for Hispanic Americans who, this very night, are living under the threat of the Simpson-Mazzoli bill, and farm workers from Ohio who are fighting the Campbell Soup Company with the boycott to legitimize workers' rights. This rainbow is making room for the Native American, the most exploited people of all, a people with the greatest moral claim and land claim amongst us. We support them as they seek the restoration of their ancient land and claim amongst us. The Rainbow Coalition includes Asian Americans who are now being killed on our streets, scapegoats for the failures of corporate, industrial, and economic policies. So, back in the 80s, this was when the Japanese economy was like taking off, and you also had neoliberalism. A lot of our auto plants were being gutted and being shipped overseas, and people, for some reason, blame the Japanese for it because that was when your Toyotas, your Datsuns, and your Mazdas, your Mitsubishis, all that shit started coming over here. So imbeciles, rightist imbeciles, blamed the Japanese people, not the Japanese corporations, for destroying the American automobile market and American automobile industry. So you literally had assholes running around looking for Asian people to attack and murder. So that's what Jesse is talking about here. The rainbow is making room for young Americans. 20 years ago, our young people were dying for a war for which they could not even vote. 20 years later, young America has the power to stop a war in Central America, meaning Nicaragua, El Salvador, and all that fuckery, and the responsibility to vote in great numbers. Young America must be politically active in 1984. The choice is war or peace. We must make room for young America. We must be unusually committed and caring as we expand our family to include new members. All of us must be tolerant and understanding as the fears and anxieties of the rejected and the party leadership express themselves in many different ways. Too often what we call hate as if it were some deeply rooted philosophy or strategy is simply ignorance, anxiety, paranoia, fear, and insecurity. So the dude know how to write a dope ass speech. And it's amazing, like in the year 2023, when everybody's like dividing themselves into categories and hating each other, or it's like oppression Olympics. I'm more oppressed than you. I'm disabled. Therefore, my opinion is more valuable than yours as a white passing Hispanic. Like, this is why it's important to have a class analysis. Otherwise, it's just this positional warfare against each other and viewing people who have the same exact interests as you as enemies. I also blame the internet because you'll say shit on Twitter that you would never say to a person's face. So, how did communists react to it? Amiri Baraka, who I told you we're going to meet later, was all supportive of it. So, why was Jesse Jackson's presence so important? Because, Baraka tells us, it forces all the candidates, or it must force all the candidates, to address questions, or at least take them into consideration, which previously would not even be considered. Not only black issues, but foreign policy, particularly including Africa, the Caribbean, Central America, the Middle East, and the rest of the Third World. Disarmament, international alliances, immigration policies, North-South relationships. So you compare this, like you actually had Jesse Jackson who put this on the agenda of a major American political party, right? Meantime, like, let's just fast forward to the year 2023. Like, American anti-imperialism is basically protesting outside an embassy of a country that's done a horrible thing with picket signs and maybe, I don't know, throwing paint at them. Like, that's not politics. That is catharsis. That is powerlessness. Okay? Like, we have to address this stuff and fight this stuff structurally. A guy that was cited in the book that I'm reading, the Valentine book, like literally said that individual political violence is the tool of an amateur. Professionals use structural methods. So basically, he's saying that if you go out and you bust a window at the, I don't know, the Ukrainian or the Russian embassy, whichever dog you're backing in this fight, that's amateur shit. Professionals use structural means to get their position across and get what they want. Politics is basically the art of getting what you want. And the left in this country does not know how to get what it wants, never mind get what other people want, which is why the left consistently fails. And the hard left is considered a joke. So he basically goes through the horrible things that Ronald Reagan, who at this point had been president for 4 years, has been doing. Propping up a bloody junta and trying to topple the Nicaraguan government, meddling in El Salvador, invading Grenada, which I talked about last week, all sorts of horrible stuff. So he talks about like the Rainbow Coalition as United Front. The so-called Rainbow Coalition, the United Front whose temp we glimpsed in the Second March on Washington in August of 1983, must be the focus of our mobilization. Jackson's candidacy must be able to register millions of new voters, certainly hundreds of thousands of black voters. The statistics that Jackson cites in his recent speeches are electrifying. For instance, he points out that Reagan won the last election by 200,000 votes in New York State, but there are over 800,000 unregistered black voters in that state alone. And that's what really irks me about like Maoists and MLs and other hardliners. Like Malcolm, probably the most revolutionary black man in American history, or at least someone who is seen as being the most revolutionary black man in American history, thought that we can use elections tactically, right? Like he literally said that your ignorant vote, your wasted vote can determine who goes to the White House and who goes to the doghouse. So would you rather have a Jesse Jackson or would you rather have a Ronald Reagan? Would you rather have a Jesse Jackson or would you rather have a Donald Trump? Okay, like these things actually mean real things to millions of people. But everybody is so concerned with being more revolutionary than now that they don't realize it. Or many of these so-called revolutionaries, the Algerians would call the palace revolutionaries, come from comfortable backgrounds. Like your mom and your dad are rich and they're together. Both of your parents are fucking investment bankers or doctors or lawyers. Your family is going to be okay, regardless of whoever is elected. Okay? But the people who you claim to want to make revolution on behalf of are not. Millions of people are going to suffer. Millions of people are going to get kicked out of the country. Millions of people are going to lose their jobs. These elections mean things. And Baraka tells us this. One stumbling block in progressive organizations for many years has been the fact that many of the would-be organizers fail to completely understand the nature of bourgeois democracy. Too often we have modeled our political work wholly on earlier historical models without making the concrete analysis of concrete conditions that Lenin called for. Mao Zedong in Problems of War and Strategy pointed out that in bourgeois democracies, the question is one of a long legal struggle, of utilizing parliament as a platform of economic and political strikes. The task is to educate the workers and build up strength through a long period of legal struggle and thus prepare for the final overthrow of capitalism. But too often, some Marxists have neglected or stepped away from this legal struggle in the parliaments and trade unions Mao speaks of. The Russia and China that many used as our ongoing models were not bourgeois democracies, but even in pre-revolutionary Russia, Lenin utilized parliament to agitate and propagandize. So basically, he's saying that all of these palace revolutionaries, all of these toy Bolsheviks, as a comrade of mine used to say, think they're smarter than Lenin and Mao. Stop being smarter than Lenin and Mao. The amateur hour politics of the pseudo-left and near-left, such as the presidential campaigns of the Communist Party USA, Socialist Workers' Party, New Alliance Party, and others, must be collectively transcended. So basically, he's denouncing the tactic of third parties like the CPUSA, SWP, what have you, of running their own candidates. Because these people are not going to fucking win. Why would you run a candidate who's not going to win? That's a sign that you're not very serious about it. So you got the Green Party running Cornel West. You've got fucking PSL running two people. Like, these people are not going to win. Am I saying that they're going to spoil the election? No, because they're not powerful enough to spoil the election. And Cornel West in particular, he started out with the fucking Jimmy Dore people. Like, this is not serious. I have all respect for Cornel West. And there's people in PSL that I respect, even though I think their fucking party is garbage. But, like, yeah, you're not going to win. Like, how many times y'all might get like 0.01%? I think in Tennessee in 2020, I think Kanye West got more votes than PSL's people. So you're just basically wasting everybody's money and time. How could people hope to make socialist revolution who cannot even elect the mayor? That's going on my gravestone. And he wraps up by saying, in this context, it is imperative that we use the Jackson candidacy as a focus of reorganization and counterattack against the growing strength of U.S. reaction before it's too late. So he actually went around and hung out with Jackson volunteers. This is again from Baraka. And this is his report. He says, Jesse Jackson's campaign has been masterfully moved and inspirational, especially in its mass expression of black and progressive political desire. The African American nation spoke on Super Tuesday and raised Jackson by the numbers into an undeniable importance to the presidential election. This is so powerful because it confirms that black people are critical to the society's functioning on any level, echoing what Malcolm said when he said that black people, if we are registered to vote, can literally decide who goes to the White House and who goes to the doghouse. Like the coalition, the Rainbow Coalition that Jackson developed, especially in the South, like they gave Democrats back the Senate in 1986. And that Senate majority stopped Robert Bork. If you don't know who Robert Bork is, like he was literally Trump on steroids. Okay, I would even say that Trump is to the left of Robert Bork. But Reagan almost put this asshole on the Supreme Court, and he didn't get to be on the Supreme Court in major part because of that. If Robert Bork had ended up on the Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade probably would have been overturned 20 years ago. So that's how bad this dude was. This is so powerful because it confirms that black people are critical to the society's functioning on any level. I repeat, you can't do shit without black people in the United States. You have never been able to do shit without black people in the United States. Sakai mentions that like we were literally imported to be the proletariat of this country. We won the Civil War by withholding our labor. There is in the Jackson campaign a powerful catalyst for the reigniting and the reawakening of a whole people and a whole movement. A civil rights movement has moved full speed into the Jesse Jackson campaign. The Jackson campaign is this present period's civil rights movement. Again, like I never saw a black person saying this about Bernie in 2016 or 2020. All respect I have for him aside, all bullshit aside, like he couldn't touch Jackson. I mean, just listen to the two speak next to each other. The objective rainbow is an exact physical parallel to the United Front and mass organizations, and indeed even the Communist Party we seek, with the latter its working class leadership that must develop for it is authentically brought into existence. The black nation is the slave history and present of U.S. society and white supremacy capitalism. Super Tuesday is actually a black belt referendum. The political focus of the black South, joined with the black oppressed nationality in the North, who are linked by blood, experience, history, and culture, define the major U.S. cities' obvious ideological and political link with the South. The fact that the whole of the African American nation is seen as a lower class speaks to the class nature of the national question. Only the destruction of imperialism can finally resolve it. The fact that the whole, not part, not some, the whole of the African American nation is seen as a lower class. The 26 major cities where African Americans are large pluralities or majorities, connected and expanded by a rationalized African American national state zone in the South, i.e., the most continuous areas of black plurality and majority, are a powerful political force in the U.S. Black people are 11% of the U.S. population. Jesse Jackson has gotten consistently 10% of the white vote. This 20% challenges the 24% of the population who voted for Reagan. The black worker is the most extreme case since national oppression, maintained racially, doubles the exploitation, the robbery, and denial of rights. The other oppressed nationalities, Native Americans, Latinos, Asians, experience the same kinds of attack, but class exploitation is fine tuned to maximize oppression by race, so that the darker the skin, the more oppressed one is likely to be, even in the same group. This shows, especially in Latinos, like you got white Latinos, which everybody makes fun of, the gusanos de Cuba, but you also have black people in Cuba. You have black people from the Dominican Republic. Like you have a racialized caste system that was set up by the Spanish, and that caste system still exists. Like I was talking to one of my coworkers yesterday. Like he was talking about how Mexicans dislike black people, and I'm not. It's not just that they dislike black people. They even dislike other Mexicans who are darker than them. Yeah, it's especially bad in California, but most of that is prison and gang shit. But still, like anti-blackness is deeply inculcated into Latino culture, Asian culture as well, especially East Asian culture. Like they see whiteness as being ideal because whiteness, and this is with Asians, is actually like connected to class because being dark means that you're a peasant, you work outside. Being white means that you get to sit up in the castle or in the house all day and maintain your white skin and do whatever rich feudal people in East Asia do. It is the fall of Africa that is being reinforced for ages now by white supremacy, the social philosophy of Western capitalism. So you actually have a communist analysis of this. This is far more advanced than anything that communists have put out recently. Like I distinctly remember in 2016 and 2020, like every hardcore Maoist, every hardcore ML was like basically shitting on Bernie Sanders. Yet you actually had this dude that was doing more for the socialist movement than simply spray painting, don't vote, revolt, prepare for protracted people's war on a vacant building in the hood would do. Like Bernie has objectively done more for socialism than the 8 or 9 Maoist groups in this country who are not political actors. They're not political actors. They have maybe 200 people between them. Bernie Sanders had thousands of people volunteering for him. The Maoist ML Hochai, whatever organizations, like they wrote screeds and scrams of shit. How many people do we think read them? Like how many people actually changed their voting pattern because of a Maoist document that they read or because of a graffiti that they saw on the side of somebody's garage? So that's why people call it LARPing. This is what a communist analysis of an election campaign looks like. Also going to like delve into my own organization. A fella, the DeHalday, who I'm eternally grateful for. If I ever meet him, I'm going to buy him a drink. Sent me this part of this piece that he wrote, and this was DSA's orientation towards the Bernie Sanders, Jesse Jackson campaign. So, they endorsed Walter Mondale in 1984. They didn't endorse anybody in the primary. Thankfully, they wouldn't make this mistake today. Jesse Jackson ran in the primaries in 84, but DSA, which grew out of the Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee and NAM, the New American Movement, it's a hell of a fucking acronym. NOM. Yeah, I'm going to a NOM meeting. Hey guys, you want to go down to NOM? Anyways, um, so a lot of the DSA people I've talked about, I've even talked to DSA people who were in DSA when this was going on, and or were in the predecessor groups, but like they admit that that was a fucking mistake because their energy could have definitely boosted them over that little threshold that it needed to be boosted over. So he ran in the primaries that year, and the decision to not endorse the progressive movement candidate was reflective of some democratic traits and political choices of early 1980s DSA. The organization remained heavily white and with a large Jewish membership that prioritized relationships with labor leaders. Jackson's sympathies for Palestinians and reported anti Semitic comments did not help him, but neither did the DSA leadership, generally unconnected to black and other people of color led social movements. So, demographic patterns and just general fuckiness. Fuck you every time. So, he ran in 1988, and they fixed that mistake and they enthusiastically joined his campaign efforts after Reagan was a lame duck, along with many other progressive socialists and communists. He won 3 times as many delegates as in 1984, and the relative success of his campaign in the Rainbow Coalition gave hope to many that a multiracial national movement could spring from his campaign. However, the lack of a Democratic Rainbow organization, Jackson's own agenda, whatever that means, and other factors dampen hopes about a new Democratic alliance against racial capitalism. Again, stupid shit. But at least they improved on the mess that they made in 1984. So, more on the Rainbow Coalition. Let's hear it in his own words.
Bound by our faith in a mighty God, with genuine respect and love for our country, and inheriting the legacy of a great party. The Democratic Party, which is the best hope for redirecting our nation on a more humane, just, and peaceful course. This is not a perfect party. We are not a perfect people, yet we are called to a perfect mission. Our mission to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to house the homeless, to teach the illiterate, to provide jobs for the jobless, and to choose the human race over the nuclear race. We are gathered here this week to nominate a candidate and adopt a platform which will expand, unify, direct, and inspire our party and the nation to fulfill this mission. My constituency is the desperate, the damned, the disinherited, the disrespected, and the despised. They are restless and seek relief. They have voted in record numbers. They have invested the faith, hope, and trust that they have in us. The Democratic Party must send them a signal that we care. I pledge my best not to let them down. There is the call of conscience, redemption, expansion, healing, and unity. Leadership must heed the call of conscience, redemption, expansion, healing, and unity. For their
This is how, like, literally every black preacher in this country speaks. Like, they have a special cadence. And that's part of why most of our black politicians have backgrounds in the ministry. Because, like, it basically, it teaches you oratorical skills. Like, I remember when the 2 brothers were kicked out of the Tennessee House of Representatives for staging a gun control protest. Like, people were mocking one of them because, like, oh, he's trying to talk like Martin Luther King. No, he grew up in the black church. Like, that's how people in the black church talk. And that's probably one of our greatest cultural treasures, the black ministerial cadence. Like, no other no other denomination of any other ethnic group like has that type of charisma. Like, they actually are taught how to talk like that. because like black people are a very orally centered culture and ethnic group. Like we're very talkative people. Like we like to fucking talk. We play the dozens. We give speeches. We do stuff like that because that goes all the way back to Africa. African people, especially in West Africa, are a very oral entertainment centered people. Like there's an entire cast of people called griots or jelly in Mali and Niger and that surrounding area, whose job is basically to go from place to place and tell stories. And like when you watch one, like they have all of this stuff committed to memory, and like they can recount the entire history of their ethnic group off the top of their head. So there's a direct link listening to Jesse Jackson speak or listening to Martin Luther King speak all the way back to Africa. It's very, very, very interesting and special.
The key to achieving our mission. Time is neutral and does not change things. With courage and initiative, leaders change things. No generation can choose the age or circumstance in which it is born, but through leadership, it can choose to make the age in which it is born an age of enlightenment, an age of jobs and peace and justice. Only leadership, that intangible combination of gifts, discipline, information, circumstance, courage, timing, will, and divine inspiration, can lead us out of the crisis in which we find ourselves. Leadership can mitigate the misery of our nation. Leadership can part the waters and lead our nation in the direction of the promised land. Leadership can lift the boats stuck at the bottom. I've had the rare opportunity to watch 7 men and then 2 pour out their souls, offer their service, and heal and heed the call of duty to direct the course of our nation. There is a proper season for everything. There is a time to sow and a time to reap. There's a time to compete and a time to cooperate. I ask for your vote on the first ballot as a vote for a new direction for this party and this nation. A vote of conviction, a vote of conscience. But I will be
People think that Jesse Jackson's campaign was just like a black campaign, a black militant campaign. Like, look at these old ass white ladies out there. Like, you got the Golden Girls sitting up there waving your campaign sign. Shit, that might actually be the actual fucking Golden Girls. But like, these people are waving your campaign signs and they're cheering for you. That's a sign that you're building a united front.
Proud to support the nominee of this convention for the presidency of the United States of America. I've watched the leadership of our party develop and grow. My respect for both Mr. Mondale and Mr. Hart is great. I've watched them struggle
That has to be a lie.
with the crosswinds and
like that's a political thing. Like in politics, you have to lie. Like you do not respect Gary Hart and you do not respect Walter Mondale. Walter Mondale in particular was boring as fuck. Like what respect do you have for him? What has Walter Mondale or Gary Hart done for black people? Like in politics, you have to lie. That's part of why people hate it. Like you have to say shit that's untrue just to appear magnanimous.
Aspires of being public servants, and I believe they will both continue to try to serve us faithfully. I'm elated by the knowledge that for the first time in our history, a woman, Geraldine Ferraro, will be recommended to share our ticket. Throughout this campaign, I've tried to offer leadership to the Democratic Party and the nation. If in my high moments I have done some good, offered some service, shed some light, healed some wounds, rekindled some hope, or stirred some rungs of apathy and indifference, or in any way along the way helped somebody, then this campaign has not been in vain. For friends who loved and cared for me, and for a God who spared me, and for a family who understood, I'm eternally grateful. If in my low moments, in word, deed, or attitude, through some error of temper, taste, or tone, I've caused anyone discomfort, created pain, or revived someone's fears that was not my truest self, if there were occasions when my grape turned into a raisin and my joy bell lost its resonance, please forgive me. Charge it to my head and not to my heart.
So, yeah. And the question is, like, could Bernie give a speech like that? I don't fucking think so. So, this is an interesting strategic analysis of the campaign. This guy named Goldenbart describes four approaches to change and dimensions of social intervention. You have your social technicians, you have your traditional social reformers, you have your social interventionists, and you have your social revolutionaries. Jackson's campaign operated from an interventionist, a social interventionist model. He opposed existing elitist values such as the sanctity of the profit motive, class differences, and unequal allocation of opportunity, goods, and power, and the consequences of those values on the lives most directly and adversely affected by the social practices which emanate from such values. Within this model of change, conflict is viewed as inevitable. In fact, Jesse Jackson has never sought to avoid basic conflicts, whether within the civil rights movement, with politicians such as Daley of Chicago, or with the black politicians who are more closely linked to the Democratic Party machine. The acceptance of conflict implies that those who possess power and have benefited most from the exploitation of others should not be expected to begin to share that power willingly or easily. So basically, what Goldenbart seems to be saying, Golden, yeah, Goldenbart seems to be saying is that the social interventionist has the possibility to transition into a social revolutionary, because like this is a communist, a Marxist, Leninist, Maoist analysis of power. Those who possess power and have benefited most from the exploitation of others should not be expected to begin to share that power willingly or easily. Of course, we go a step further and say that armed struggle is necessary in the final analysis because there's never been a peaceful revolution. Um, and by revolution, we mean like a total overthrow of the existing order and the establishment of a dictatorship of the proletariat. Okay, that's not what Jesse Jackson was about. Jesse Jackson was at root a social interventionist in the Martin Luther King tradition, because it was under Martin Luther King that he came to his political views and beliefs. Jackson had previously been involved in the use of nonviolent strategies based on the examples of Gandhi and Jackson's mentor, Dr. Martin Luther King. While these strategies were also power coercive, they used civil disobedience to demonstrate the injustice, unfairness, or cruelty of institutional racism. Bernie Sanders actually cut his teeth in this same era. Um, Granted, I would place Bernie to the right of Jesse Jackson and even to the right of MLK, but he took part in civil rights demonstrations. He was even arrested at one in Chicago. I believe it was a sit-in at his university. But so you have this entire generation of democratic socialist or social democrat or whatever the fuck you want to call them, democratic socialist politicians who came out of this tradition. An entire generation of activists that was mentored and developed under Martin Luther King's guidance and leadership. The intent was to arouse the guilt of the oppressor in order to gain sufficient leverage to force them to act more humanely. Radical analysis of the civil rights movement that I've read kind of puts the lie to that. It wasn't to arouse the guilt of the oppressor because, as Kwame Ture said, the oppressor has no guilt. The oppressor likes what he is doing, and the oppressor realizes that if he takes his foot off the boot, if he takes his boot off the black man's neck, black woman's neck, black people in general's necks for 5 seconds, we're gonna get up and we're gonna fucking stab you. So, um, I don't agree with the analysis that the intent was to arouse the guilt of the oppressor. The intent was to arouse the outrage of the world and embarrass the United States so that the United States would be forced to make concessions and yield to the pressure that these other countries are putting on it, especially if you're fighting a war for democracy in Southeast Asia. I cannot talk tonight. Jackson's purpose was to gain sufficient leverage through the mobilization of blacks, poor whites, Hispanics, women, and other oppressed groups to vote in sufficient numbers in the primaries and caucuses to determine their latent political power as a coalition. He hoped this demonstration would force elites to the negotiating table where compromises could be worked out and a commitment could be made by all parties. So at root, like any other politician, Jackson was a bargainer. So this is an analysis of people who worked for him in 1988. He talks about how he did not start with money, ads, polling, or endorsements. He started with a message and a mission. Kind of like Bernie. He kind of echoes Bernie here. Like Bernie did not, at least in the beginning, have a shitload of money or people backing him, but he had a social democratic message that resonated with a lot of youth. He started with working people as the point of challenge. That's the thing. Like he did not start with, even though he cut his teeth in the civil rights movement and he developed and was mentored by veterans of the civil rights movement. Like he realized that it was important to take working people as your key link. He walked picket lines. He stood with family farmers. He facing foreclosure. He reached out to progressive peace, women's, gay, and lesbian, and environmental activists. That was the first major presidential campaign that actually did that. And this is extremely important in light of the AIDS crisis. And this was at the same time when the Revolutionary Communist Party of the United States, these supposed hyper super revolutionaries, thought that homosexuality, especially amongst men, gay men like myself, were supposedly bourgeois elements that simply didn't want to be around women. So you have Jesse Jackson, who was denounced as a bourgeois radical by the RCP, having a more advanced view on queer people than the supposed Maoist vanguard did. In 1984, his campaign focused on consolidating support in the black community, often against the resistance of traditional leaders. He helped register 2 million new voters, unleashing the energy that helped Democrats take back the Senate by 1986. That majority, as I said earlier, voted to block the nomination of Bork to the Supreme Court. So in 88, he focused on workers. In 84, he focused on black people. But at the same time, the Rainbow Coalition was still a thing. So it wasn't like focusing on black people because we think black people are superior. He focused on black people because that was his constituent base. If you don't have your own constituents in a row, like you have no business going out to other people saying that this is what I have to offer you. That's what white leftists fail to understand. Like if you can't organize white people, or if white people do not follow your position or your line, you have no business coming into the black community saying that, oh, we're here to help. No, you're not. Your own people don't listen to you. Why the fuck should we listen to you? To paraphrase New York Governor Mario Cuomo, Jackson campaigned in poetry while others droned in prose. The poetry, however, had a purpose. Jackson's genius was in presenting a complicated message and agenda in language that, as William Grider put it, had a beat so strong that even white folks could dance to it. While mainstream politicians focused on law and order, mainstream politicians like Andre Dickless, Jackson's focus was economic violence, the violence done to working and poor people in an economy that worked for the few and not the many. While his opponents were trying on ideas to see what fit, Jackson's message drove the debate and made the most sense. The cost of welfare and jail care on the backside of life is so much greater than the cost of Head Start and daycare on the front side of life. A bridge falls every other day, he noted, calling for a major initiative to rebuild America, paid for in part by using public pension funds with full government guarantees. He pushed for empowering workers, raising the minimum wage and indexing it to median incomes, a card check to make organizing unions easier, an equal pay and comparable worth, family leave, and for holding corporations accountable with a corporate code of conduct, notice and reparations for plant closings, and more. He railed against an economy that had drugs and guns flowing in and jobs going out. The Chinese did not take our jobs from us, he argued. American corporations took the jobs to them, seeking low-wage labor abroad. His focus on drugs was central to his continued call for personal responsibility supported by public policy. Challenging Reagan's lies directly, he educated. Most poor people are not lazy. They're not black. They're not brown. They're mostly white, female, and young. Most poor people are not on welfare. They work every day. They catch the early bus. They work every day. They raise other people's children. They work in hospitals. They wipe the bodies of those who are sick. They empty their bedpans. And yet when they get sick, they cannot lay in the bed they made up every day. So Jackson argued the case for a national health care plan, what would now be called Medicare for All. So basically, what modern day progressive politicians are doing is boosting shit and promoting shit like they literally are plagiarizing Jesse Jackson's platform. Like that's literally what's happening. We're still talking about this shit today. So Jesse Jackson can be seen as like the harbinger, the vanguard to your Bernies, to your AOCs, to all of these people, to the fucking entire squad of people. Like they need to give this man his props. Warning of the dangers of having guided missiles and misguided leaders, Jackson put forth the Jackson Doctrine in foreign policy, founded on four principles: support for international law, self-determination, human rights, and the promotion of international economic justice. He called for working with Mikhail Gorbachev to end the arms race with the USSR while implementing a no first-use policy. He denounced Reagan's Central America wars. At a time when the U.S. considered Nelson Mandela a terrorist and South America's apartheid government an ally, he condemned that government as terrorist and embraced Mandela as a freedom fighter, demanding a boycott of South Africa. So, in short, he garnered 7 million popular votes, over 30% of the total cast. He won in 100 congressional districts. In 54 primary contests, he came in first or second in 46, winning 13. He amassed 1,218 delegates. His opponents paid him the tribute of recycling parts of his message as he dragged the party towards what he termed the moral center. So that is where Bernie started off at. Like Bernie Sanders' platform, Bernie Sanders' message, Jesse Jackson had all of that long before this whole democratic socialist trend started. So why do we see Bernie as being like the harbinger or the leader of American social democracy or democratic socialism? I keep saying that. I mean, they need to find something else to call themselves. Anyways, like you cannot confuse Maoism with anything else. You cannot say Leninism, Marxism. But anyways, the thing is, like, whiteness is palatable, okay? Like Jesse Jackson, how he's talking, stuff like that may turn a lot of people off. And the comrade from DSA talked about like how a lot of the white people that were in DSA tied to organized labor did not want Jesse Jackson because they thought that he was offensive. They thought that he was basically too ghetto. Yeah, they thought that Bernie Sanders. They thought that Jesse Jackson was too fucking ghetto to be president. Like, of course, he couched it in academic language, but the point is that Jesse Jackson was too black and too ghetto to be president of the United States. That's why the old school DSA didn't endorse him. That's why they endorsed fucking Walt Mondale. Lessons learned. So, this is probably my favorite part of his 84 keynote address.
Don't leave anybody out. I would rather have Roosevelt in a wheelchair than Reagan on a horse. The rainbow is making room for small farmers. They have suffered tremendously under the Reagan regime. They'll either receive 90% parity or 100% charity. We must address their concerns and make room for them. The rainbow includes lesbians and gays. No American citizen ought to be denied equal protection under the law. We must be unusually...
Note, this is 1984. Like, the AIDS epidemic was 3 years old. Reagan was making jokes about the fucking Staten Island ferry. Like, people with AIDS were seen as being almost universally queer or black, and were seen as being pariahs. Like, if you look at pictures of hospitals from that time, it was like COVID today. Even though HIV is not airborne, you cannot get HIV from any means other than directly coming into contact with the bodily fluids of somebody that has it. But they didn't know that back then, so people were fucking ignorant, kicking little kids out of school and stuff like that. So for Jackson to say this, and this kind of belies the notion, puts to the lie, the notion that black people are inherently homophobic, or if black people are Christian, we are inherently homophobic. Like, Jackson is literally a reverend, okay? But here he is, 1984, Vanguard, major political party candidate, coming out in support of queer people, gay and lesbian people, as part of his Rainbow Coalition. So whenever you hear people saying that black people are homophobic, or black men or black Christians are homophobic, refer them to this speech.
Committed and caring as we expand our family to include new members. All of us must be tolerant and understanding as the fears and anxieties of the rejected and the party leadership express themselves in many different ways. Too often, what we call hate, as if it were some deeply rooted philosophy or strategy, is simply ignorance, anxiety, paranoia, fear, and insecurity. To be strong leaders, we must be long-suffering as we seek to right the wrongs of our party and our nation. We must expand our party, heal our party, and unify our party. That is our mission in 1984.
If a guy came along talking like this today, he could probably sweep the Democratic Party. Like, this is what Democrats need today. They don't need fucking Sleepy Joe. Like, this dude, he's walking a picket line because Sean Fain summoned him. He's walking a picket line not because he cares about workers, but because he wanted to show up Trump. Like, politics in the United States is in such desperate, deep, dear need of somebody like this. Somebody who could talk like this. Somebody who has this type of platform and who isn't fucking 80-something years old. Like, this was Jesse Jackson in his prime. So, am I saying that, like, black elected officials are inherently better than white progressive elected officials? Absolutely not. Like, I would rather have Bernie Sanders as mayor of Atlanta than Andre Dickless. But that's the thing. Like, you have to take not only national origin, not only race into account, but you also have to take into account politics, political line. So, I don't think Jesse Jackson was dope. Millions of people did not think Jesse Jackson was dope just because he was black. They thought that he was dope. Like, you have farmers in Indiana and Idaho and Montana and Iowa voting for this black dude from the hood, from the slums, not because he was black. Many of these people might have been in the pointy hood group at one point or another in their lives. They've supported Jesse Jackson because he was a progressive. He wasn't a revolutionary, but he was a progressive and a progressive reformer. So that's what's good about Jesse Jackson. Of course, he said some stupid shit, particularly about Jewish people, but he apologized for it in his speech. And if I recall correctly, he had a pretty substantial amount of Jews that supported him. So, can there be another Jesse Jackson today? It depends. Like, I think the Clavernacle did a video on like why Gen Z politicians suck so much. I think Gen Zers are far too like irony poisoned to at least at these. Plus, they're also very young, so I think as they get more life experience and as they develop more, I understand a substantial chunk of my viewership might be Gen Zers, so I'm not like offending you all or anything. But like, I think as y'all get more life experience and as y'all slowly approach 30, we very possibly might see somebody like Jesse Jackson arise from the Gen Z generation. Because like millennials, I'm not saying that we shit the bed, but we leave a lot to be desired. So keep hope alive, I guess.